Mr. Voodoo Wheel, are you feeling all right? I mean, you haven't really shown up the last 2 weeks. I mean, you had no problem at all hitting all over my favorite team, Ferrari, and then you screwed over Red Bull in Monaco, and then you just kind of disappeared. We'll spin you later and see if you got any more juice left in you. But I'm getting a little worried about you.
Hey, Chris here. Thanks for tuning into the Delta. And welcome to the Power Ranking and Voodoo Wheel episode for round 12 of Formula One, where we're heading to Silverstone. A fun little video we're going to do. We're going to go over the top 6 teams in my power ranking opinion. The keyword is opinion. But I think I'm on to something here. So we'll get right into it. And just before that, just a reminder to like and subscribe. Really helps out the channel a lot. And we'll get into it now. So we'll start with number 6. And I got Haas, which was kind of like a difficult decision to make, if I'm being honest. I mean, we got 2 teams that have currently been out of the Voodoo Wheel power rankings lineup, and 1 team that just hasn't been performing that has been on the lineup. And trying to figure out where to put who was kind of like a mind and thinking exercise. But sticking with just Haas for now, they have 19 total points in the constructors standings. They surpassed Alpine and are just now behind RB by 11. There last week in Austria, Nico Hülkenberg placed 6th and Kevin Magnussen placed 8th. And they put together an excellent race. Now, I'm not sure if this was like a one-time deal where everything was perfect for them and they were going full swing and nothing went wrong and the plan was executed perfectly or what, but they managed to battle Perez, Nico Hülkenberg passing Perez there on the final lap of the race. It was just really, really good work from them. And likewise, someone who did really poorly was Aston Martin, and Stroll 13th. You have Aston Martin in 18th, Fernando Alonso, not very good. And then if you go back to Spain, Fernando Alonso 12th, Lance Stroll 14th. Not very good 2 races in a row from Aston Martin. So it's really tough to say, does it keep Aston Martin in the power rankings and keep Haas out just based off of a recent performance? Because even in Spain, you had Nico Hülkenberg just missing points at 11th place. So that's why I have Haas at 6th for now. They're on the edge. They have one bad race, they're out of there. But for round 12 heading into Silverstone, I got them at 6th. And that will take us then into 5th, which is Alpine. Alpine scored double points there in Spain. And then they only scored one of their drivers in points in Silverstone. But I said all they had to do was figure out how to be better than Aston Martin. And like I said, Stroll 13th, Fernando Alonso 18th. We are looking at a situation where Alpine did it better than Aston Martin. So I can't confidently kick Alpine out just because Aston Martin has 58 points in the constructor. I mean, it stinks that Alpine only has 9, but Alpine in recent times is performing better than the Aston Martins. So just because of recent performances and what seems to be a positive upswing for the team, I got them in 5th. And that definitely means then Aston Martin is the first real team to get kicked out of my power rankings and eliminated from the Voodoo Wheel. Not that they need it. Moving on to 4th, we have Ferrari. Ferrari sits at 291 points in the constructors' standings. Their lead is slowly but surely dwindling from McLaren, but they still hold the lead. And they're screwing up too much. If it wasn't for their massive lead and the cars behind them just being so bad comparatively, I would feel better if they were in the 5th spot. It's just Alpine and Haas aren't at Ferrari level, and the next team would be Aston Martin or RB, and obviously Ferrari's better than them as well. So Ferrari sits comfortably in the 4th place spot. But yeah, you got a rough bout going on with Charles Leclerc, who can't even get a qualifying lap in, and Carlos Sainz being gifted 3rd place podium there in Austria. Spain, not much more excitement, you know? I mean, I guess they finished 5th and 6th, but that was the race they were supposed to bring the upgrades in, and they were supposed to be competing with the Red Bulls, or at the bare minimum, fight away with McLaren, but they didn't. Now, they are bringing upgrades, apparently, to Silverstone. Nothing that I'm too aware of specifically, but they're what I call bits and bobs, as I've learned from the UK community. Hopefully, that's something that they can carry some momentum into the race with, show some pace, show some speed, show some competition, show some drive. For the love of God, show up to a race weekend and want it. You look at Lando, you look at Max, you look at Piastri even. They want it so bad, and then like Ferrari's like, oh, you know, we just didn't have the greatest setup, and things just weren't right come Saturday, and I was so uncertain, and shut up, show up, race. Let's go, guys. Then we can go on to number 3. Mercedes is going to stay at the number 3 spot. I don't think they're anywhere near the McLaren level quite yet. I mean, if they steal another win or two coming up, or especially if they can get a double podium and Mercedes or McLaren has a bad bout there in Silverstone, we can start talking about maybe putting Mercedes in number 2 for the power rankings. But Mercedes sits at 3 pretty comfortably. They have outperformed Ferrari for the last few races, at least since Monaco, pretty well. They only have 196 points in the constructor standings. They're pretty far down from 3rd. McLaren has 268. So there's a lot of work to do on Mercedes' side to catch up in that retrospect. But I mean, if you're snagging a victory, even by luck, that means you're doing something right. I've said it 100 times already. I know George Russell was essentially gifted the win because of the Turn 3 incident there in Austria, but you don't get into 3rd place on accident either. You got to qualify well, you got to take care of your car well, so on and so forth. All the cliche things that race car drivers say, right? And that's what he did. And sure enough, it's not that Lewis Hamilton's doing poorly either. We all thought he was like not driving the greatest, right? And then there were some pictures out there with like a hole in his side pod. Well, of course you're not going to race the fastest with a hole in your side pod. But nonetheless, Mercedes is doing a great job thus far since, I'd say, Miami. I don't have the data right in front of me for that, but I feel like they've just gotten better since Miami. Just adding a little piece here and a little piece there and a front wing there, and let's do something with the floor. And look at them now, stealing wins from Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. Yeah, so Mercedes, number 3. And then you go on to McLaren. McLaren sits at 2nd spot because they are definitely the 2nd best team on paper. They're a 2nd best team on like visual. I mean, some people might even say right now their car is even faster than Red Bull's, because it just seems that every race within recent times, Lando Norris has an ability to catch Red Bull. Now, whether that's strategy changing or messing up on Red Bull's side with their strategies, or the car's not as quick, or McLaren's car is faster, it doesn't matter. Like, it's becoming a regular thing, and McLaren is showing that they can't, that they're the team that you need to be worried about. Like Ferrari, if they don't get their act in gear, McLaren's going to pass them easily. It's just, it's a numbers game. It's math.
Boom! 2 + 2 is 4. -1, that's 3. Quick maths.
Don't know if they can catch Red Bull in the constructors. They're about 93 points off, something like that. So that might be a tough bout because you're always going to have to be battling Max Verstappen, who is always going to be trying to get 25 maximum points. Piastri, comparatively to Perez, stellar. Perez not doing well, Piastri doing great. Piastri's even getting on the podiums, last there in Austria. But he's doing his job as the number 2 driver. Lando's getting all the show, getting all the glitz and the glam. But there's Oscar Piastri always finding a way to get points. And I'm not talking about typically 9th and 10th place. Like, he's 7th, 5th, 6th, 4th, 3rd. These are excellent results coming from such a young driver. There's a reason why McLaren is at number 3 in the constructors and approaching Ferrari's numbers. And then that leaves Red Bull at number 1. Red Bull's at number 1 because they have a Max Verstappen still, and they have a Red Bull car. But I said earlier that if Sergio Perez doesn't get their act in gear, I don't know if I can just throw Red Bull at number 1 just because of Max Verstappen if that continues. Max Verstappen is holding the fort down, if you will. And because of that, they have this massive lead of almost 100 points above McLaren and about 60 points in front of Ferrari. They're in no danger of being knocked off, including in the driver standings, too. The driver, Max Verstappen, is looking great there. I don't think anyone is going to catch him. He has 237 total points, with Lando Norris at 156. We're getting to a point now also in the season where there's not even enough races that, if Lando Norris won every single race and Max Verstappen came in 2nd or 3rd every single race, the math
Quick maths.
would not work out where Lando Norris would end up jumping him. So it's going to be tough to dethrone Red Bull, whether you're a Ferrari or a McLaren or a Mercedes. I think we're just going to have to deal with the fact that Red Bull is going to be the best in all the rankings, whether it be constructors, drivers, power rankings, my made-up power rankings. They're just going to have to sit there. Again, if we have a few more crazy races where, Max Verstappen gets knocked out or Perez just doesn't show up and so on and so forth, maybe we could talk about a round or two where McLaren takes the number 1 spot, but I just don't see it happening. And until it does happen, Red Bull sits at number 1. And now it's time. Boom. Voodoo wheel time. Going to have to sit in a way where it's not too shiny. Should have got a matte voodoo wheel, right? That's the problem. It's gloss. It landed on Alpine last week, and that's who we'll start with there today. You know the deal. Lands on one of the teams. They're the ones that get cursed by the voodoo. And then you also have Winner's Woes, In the Pits, Podium Plunge, and Mechanical Mayhem. If we ever land on them, I'll re-explain it. But let's just get right into the spin and see who the voodoo wheel is casting their evil spell on next. There we go. Wasn't a horrible spin, and it's slowing down. Oh my god, it has to do it again. Oh my god, on Ferrari. Ferrari got the voodoo wheel there in Canada, and we all know what happened there. Why do you hate me? You didn't show up for Alpine, and you didn't do anything to McLaren, but, you screwed Ferrari over in Canada hard, voodoo wheel. Well, let's see what it does here at Silverstone. Another double DNF. Charles Leclerc doesn't even get out of Q2. Carlos Sainz's car burst into flames. Bonotto shows back up to the pit wall. I don't know. You tell me in the comments what you think is going to happen to Ferrari this weekend at Silverstone. But until next time, take care, stay safe, and have fun out there. Bye, everybody.